Before we get started, I wanted to get a few things out of the way. Firstly, there's been enough bashing on Daniel. That's not what this video is about, and it's not helpful at this point. I'll try to be as objective as possible and look at all aspects of what could have been going on, so let me make a few things clear first. No matter the case, Stephen was paid too little for 3 videos that produced well over $30,000 in total, being paid perhaps $225. Assuming that he was in all 3 of these videos, it is unreasonably low. However, before we all jump on trying to cancel Daniel, although it's a bit late now, let's try to objectively scope out all of the possibilities and why perhaps both sides could have been at least at some fault. Around 9 months ago, when the primary incident went down, we'd, on average, see a video roughly every 2 to 3 weeks. So let's say that the production on one DanPlan video takes around 17 days, 2.5 weeks. It's implied that Hoser is a main animator and Daniel is a prime editor, whilst Stephen assists with neither of these things. This means it's possible that Stephen's only time dedication to any given video is, let's say, 1 to 3 hours, when they actually record the initial audio for the video to then be animated and edited. So let's say we have a line. It represents the time taken to produce one DanPlan video. If Stephen's time dedication ends around here, with Daniel and Hoser's additions ending here, right at the end, then assuming the entire team works on a single video for, let's say, an average of 3 hours a day for 17 days, then Stephen's time contribution pertains to around 4% of the total production time on any given video. Now, there's a big problem in that block of information, and that is how many assumptions I'm making. I've had to assume Stephen's contribution, total video production time, as well as Hoser and Daniel's contribution time. When I put it on the table like that, it makes my point almost seem somewhat ridiculous, as if I'm assessing Stephen's worth based on multiple compounding assumptions, and yet that's what this mob mentality is supporting after Stephen's video. Stephen knew this would happen and kind of attempted to tell you guys not to go blindly after Daniel after hearing only Stephen's side of the story, because that's exactly right. We simply do not have enough information to make an educated and conclusive assessment of the situation, and yet DanPlan has lost tens of thousands of subscribers in only a few days based on the ignorant and poorly informed assessments and opinions of the masses. In any case, if Stephen contributed around 4% of time to the total production time of every video, then yes, it's possible that Dan would have wanted more from him, or perhaps downplayed his involvement and contribution to each video based on how little Dan sees of his interaction to the video or his contribution to the video, regardless of how important it is. That's because Dan sees the entire production of each video. That is, he has a recording session that lasts a while, a couple hours, then oversees a potentially 2-week-long team effort of editing, animating, and all that stuff that's happened, void of Stephen's contribution. So it's not completely unreasonable that he would perhaps downplay and misinterpret Stephen's contribution to each video. Remember, it's incredibly easy for us viewers to see Stephen's video and just be enraged at how morally incompetent Daniel is and etc. But we don't see anything that Daniel sees in the production of every single video. All we see is the end result. We watch it, we find Stephen funny, and for many of us, it's enough to make people think that Stephen is the most important member. And people are going crazy and saying some pretty brutal stuff about Daniel in response to his quitting. Of course, I believe that they were friends, and together they made a great channel, and I definitely believe that Daniel did undermine the contribution and effect that Stephen had on the channel, and that was most certainly a mistake on Daniel's part. But it seems now that because it's convenient, a lot of people are completely underplaying Daniel and perhaps even Hoser's contribution to facilitate their anger towards Daniel. Remember, Daniel and Stephen argued for hours over a 2-day span, and whilst Daniel said some hurtful things, it's absolutely fair to assume that Stephen did also. And in the heat of the argument, Daniel could have been incredibly frustrated, and they were both not understanding each other. But in the end, I don't know what happened in that argument, and you don't either. None of us do. And yet we are all so quick to jump on this hate train for Daniel, someone we all loved but a week ago. And yes, we did. We loved the trio of them. It just seems somewhat absurd that we're getting so frustrated at Daniel when we know so little about what has happened. We can be frustrated at the situation and that it has seemingly ended this way, but don't direct all that anger at Daniel until we know more than we do now. Then you can make your final conclusions and see what happens in the end. Not to digress too much, but we saw this kind of thing when KSI and Deji were fighting. Deji made a video, everyone hated KSI. KSI responded, everyone hated Deji. And so on for weeks. Literally a dozen videos, and the mob would shift with every single one. Don't let this be some petty drama that we're blindly getting behind under the masquerade of support. If we all actually care about DanPlan, then simply support them until an outcome is reached. Support them all, and if the conclusion comes that one was actually very in the wrong in the end, then stick with the other one, or both, or none. It doesn't matter. But this witch hunting mentality that has been adopted in the last decade needs to settle down majorly. Just give Stephen support at this time. All this anger that we're directing at Daniel should be support directed at Stephen right now. He seems like he's having a pretty rough time, and I don't think he would want us to just be witch hunting Daniel. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. See ya.